Hello and welcome to my channel. This is the second video in a creative series where I share some of my handmade projects. Over the past month, I have been doing some knitting and sewing. As I mentioned in the first video of this series, I want to start making some of my own clothing items. I am planning on doing mostly knitting and sewing and maybe some crochet items. But I also want to work on refining some of my knitting and sewing skills. I have been doing both for quite some time, but I haven't done much along the lines of garments that I plan on wearing daily. Today I want to share with you what I've been working on over the past month, but before we get too far into the video, if you are new here, welcome. My name is Connie, and if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Today I have a couple finished items to share with you, some works in progress, a dilemma, and what my plans are for this upcoming fall. In my first creative video, I might have overestimated the amount of time that I was going to have to work on sewing and knitting projects over this summer. We have had some beautiful weather, and even though I've been spending a lot of time outside and in the garden, I have still found some time to work on sewing and knitting. So my first finished object, I actually don't have it right here with me, but I will put up a picture of it. It is of the Storm Sweater Baby by Petite Knit. And this was a gift knit that I made for my niece who will be having a baby later this summer. The sizes that are included are size 0 month through 3 years. I chose to make the 6 to 9 month size. I chose this size because the time of year that the baby's going to be born, and without knowing the size that the baby will be, I figured this 6 to 9 month size would be able to be a potential sweater for this winter, and just cuffing up the sleeves, or possibly they could get through spring and maybe even next winter depending on the size of the baby. And the recommended needle size is a US 2.5, which is a 3 millimeter, and a US 1.5, which is a 2.5 millimeter. I ended up sizing down a half of a size for the needles because my gauge was a little bit larger than what was recommended in the pattern. And this, I found the pattern to be really easy to follow. It was a fun knit. It had nice, it has a stripes of texture. And so I found that I had that finished line for each section that I kept working toward, so it made the pattern feel like it was working through quite quickly. I was a little bit nervous that the neck hole was going to be too small. It just kind of looked small when I finished the sweater, but it did have a nice stretch to it that I don't think that there will be any issues with the size of that. But that is my first finished project of the summer. The next object that I finished is another Petite knit pattern, and that was a sweater that I made for myself. I made the Cumulus Tee. It has a rounded V-neck, and it is a top-down sweater made all in stockinette stitch. And then it has I-cord finishes around the neck, sleeves, and the bottom of that sweater. It's very size inclusive. I actually, while I was knitting the pattern, ended up getting an email where they notified me that they included more sizes in the pattern. So currently the sizes go from an extra, extra small to a 5XL size. So there are several sizes that you can choose from. I ended up making this in a size small. I used the recommended needle size, which was a US 2.5 3mm and a US 1.5, which is a 2.5mm. I find that I could have potentially sized down at one point in the sweater. So first let me show you what the sweater ended up looking like. It is a little wrinkled because I have been wearing it quite a bit, but I found that when I work the back and forth stockinette stitch, my knitting is a little bit tighter than when I get down to where you're working the stockinette stitch in the round. Then it's a little looser. So I almost wish that once I got to where the garment was working all in the round, that maybe I had have sized down a little bit, because I do notice a slight difference in the top portion gauge to the bottom portion. And I think the sweater overall turned out really well. I have a couple of spots where my knitting did get a little loose on it, and I can see, I'll hold it up and see if I can. So I can tell where my stitches aren't as tight as I would like them to be. Here's actually a really good example of that. But I don't think when I'm wearing it that it's anything that anyone else would notice. So I'm not really going to worry about it too much. I could have made this on maybe like a half of a size needle smaller and liked it just as well. The fabric is a little thin, so I find that I do wear a tank top underneath it. And if I had have made it with a little bit tighter gauge, then I probably would not need to do that. I ended up making this sweater in the recommended yarn, which was Knitting for Olive pure silk, and I chose the color Putty. And the only change that I did make on the sweater is when I was doing the I-cord around the bottom edge of the sweater, I didn't follow the instructions exact. My hips are quite a bit wider than what my waist is, so where I would wear a small on top, my bottom sizes are usually more of like a medium to large size. So I was a little nervous when I was making this that I-cord edge would make it a little snug around my hips, and I didn't feel comfortable with having that. So I did end up in the instructions when it's telling you how to bind off. Let me see if I can explain this correctly of how I did this without giving away what the pattern is. But at the bottom, when you're binding off, they give a certain amount of stitches you knit, and then you knit two together, and they say do this section this many times, and then they give you another section that's knit this amount, and then knit three together, and they give you repeats of both of those. And what I ended up doing is every other time I was doing those series, I would increase the first section where you're just knitting two together an extra time. So it kind of slowed the bind off of it and made that I-cord a little less snug. And I don't know exactly the amount of stitches extra that I added to that bottom, but it was a good amount. I'm really happy with the way that it turned out, and it's very comfortable. It's not snug anywhere around my hips, and I find that the fit of it is really nice. And I definitely am planning on getting more of the pure silk to knit another one of these in possibly a color and not a neutral. So I am very happy with the yarn and with the pattern. I have one more finished object, and that is a sewing object that I did. But I'll stand up and you can see, and this is a linen top. And let me read to you a little bit about it. This is called the Phoebe Linen Top, and it's a free pattern from fabricstore.com. It comes in sizes 0 to 2 and goes up to size 28-30. And I purchased the linen from fabricstore.com. I only needed 1 yard of fabric to finish this project, so it was a really quick, fun sew. This is a beginner-friendly pattern, and they feature it on their blog, which is called The Thread, where they give a step-by-step tutorial showing you everything that you need to know to complete this pattern. And I found that to be very helpful because I haven't ever done anything that requires you to cut bias tape and use the bias tape to finish off your armhole and neckline. So I did end up using the bias tape. I think I did a pretty good job. I was concentrating on keeping all of my stitches and seams nice and neat, and having a new technique mixed in with this pattern really helped give me a little bit of confidence that I can try some more difficult patterns. So I definitely would recommend this. I'll probably make another one of these. This linen was a little stiff, and I think that I'll get a lot of use out of it, but I did purchase another linen to make some pants with, and I found that that linen was a lot softer and kind of flowed a lot better, and so I am considering making another one of these tops with that linen. I will put links for both of them down below in the description, and I'm not positive. I'll have to look back at it and see if one is just a lighter weight than the other, but they definitely feel different. Now I'm going to go on and talk about some of my work in progress I have, and the first one I'm going to talk about is also my dilemma, and that is the Lacy Loops top by Other Loops. And I am making this, and as you can see, I'm almost done. I am down to the ribbing at the bottom, but I only have this much yarn left. And this is only my fault. The pattern actually says that you need 250 grams of yarn if you choose to make it in the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, where you hold 2 strands together throughout the whole pattern. And when I was looking at how much yarn that I would need, I had 200 grams of pure silk in the color Coal, which that's what this is. And I looked at the pattern at one of the other options for different yarn that you could use, and I said, oh look, you only need 200 grams. Well, that was if you chose the other type of yarn. So now I am 50 grams off from completing this top, and it's a beautiful knit so far. I'm definitely happy with it. I will read a little bit about the pattern. This comes in sizes extra small to extra, extra large, and it is a top-down knit. It has a lot of yarn overs to create this nice lacy eyelet fabric, and I have to decide if I should buy one more ball of pure silk in this color, and I'm a little worried because if I do, is it going to actually match this color? So if any of you have ever purchased yarn from Knitting for Olive that was pure silk and it being several months away from each other because I did purchase this a few months back. Did you have any noticeable difference in color? Or should I pull this apart and use this yarn to make a different top and maybe order some new yarn and make it over again with yarn that I order all at one time? So for now, this project is on hold and I have to kind of just sit and think about what to do for a little while and decide what's the best option. So if you have any words of wisdom here, I definitely need it because I don't know what to do. I don't want to take the whole thing apart, but at the same time, if I order one ball and it doesn't match this, then what am I going to do with that one ball? So if you have any suggestions, let me know. I guess I could pull out half of this and put the new ball with one of the older balls and work the middle section and then use one of the older balls to finish it off, and that would probably blend it in a little bit better. But I haven't really decided what I'm going to do with this. So until now, this is on hold, and even if I finish this sometime during the winter, I could always wear it underneath a cardigan or a jacket or something to make it a little bit warmer, because we definitely have cold winters here, so you're not running around with sleeveless tops on all the time. My other project that I have that is a work in progress is the cast pant. I haven't finished that yet. So far I only have the paper pattern cut out. I have my material all washed and ironed and ready for cutting, and I just haven't had the time to sit down and sew it because we've had too much nice weather to be inside sewing for me. But that pattern is the cast pant. Let me look at my notes for the cast pant. That is another free pattern from fabricsstore.com, and it is a very minimalist, chic pattern, they explain it as, and it has options of you can make it full length or a shorter, maybe about, not really as short as a capri length, but a little bit shorter or a little longer than that length. And the sizes are ladies sizes 02 up to 28-30. And I did figure it out, and I believe I will be making the size, I think I ended up, it was either the 8-10 or the 12-14. I can't remember what size I ended up cutting out. But I definitely am excited to get started working on that. Within the next week, I feel like I should definitely have it finished and started, because it's not a very involved pant. It seems like it's a very beginner friendly. It does have elastic waist, and it includes pockets on the sides. And then finally, I just wanted to talk about some of my plans for this fall. I am excited to get working on some other items, and as I've said before, I did end up overestimating the amount of time I had to work on projects for this summer, and I feel like here it is, the beginning of August, and my brain is already thinking about fall knits. And knowing that I wasn't able to complete all of my summer items, I really have a feeling I should start working on fall now, so I can actually wear what I make throughout the fall instead of feeling rushed and trying to get garments made just so I have enough time to wear them. The first thing I want to talk about as far as fall knits is what I have in stash for one, the more natural fibers like wool and cotton, because I am trying to transition more from using mostly acrylics and yarns that I've purchased at the box craft stores nearby to using a little bit better quality natural fibers that I can make a garment out of, and it can last me for years, because I find that the things I make out of acrylic don't always stay in the shape, doesn't hold as long, and the fabric doesn't end up looking as nice over the years of wear. So in my stash currently, I only have the Knitting for Olive merino that I mentioned in the first video, and this is artichoke purple. I have, I think, 6 balls of this yarn, so that would be 300 grams. I was planning on making a shirt for this summer, and I don't think that's going to happen, and I'll probably hold off and maybe start a t-shirt maybe for this coming spring and not start it until maybe after the new year. I'll probably hold on to this yarn a little bit longer. And my other yarn I have is this Knitting for Olive heavyweight merino in brown bear, and I have enough of this yarn to make a sweater, and I have been going back and forth whether I want to make a sweater or a cardigan, and I think I've settled on a sweater for this. It's not going to be too oversized. I want it to be just very basic, something that I can wear over and over again, that doesn't have too much trendiness to it. I have made several textured knits over the last couple of knits that I made, and so now I would like to do something a little more plain, and I think that this color will be perfect for this fall. That will probably be something that I decide on and will be my next knit project that I make for a clothing item. And then I have one more item that I am planning on doing, and I had mentioned in the first video I had some cotton yarn that I had bought at Webb's, and I was planning on making some dishcloths, and I asked if anyone would be interested in getting the pattern that I use for my dishcloths in my kitchen, and I considered making a video for that, and I did get a couple people who said that they would be interested in seeing that. So that is going to be a video that I will be working on and hopefully get started on really soon. It'll take me a little bit of time to actually video the whole thing, so I will start working on that and have that video out coming up. And other than that, I would like to start talking about my stash of acrylic yarn and what I plan on doing with that, because for so many years that's what I had been working with, kind of using that and a lot of cotton yarn too. And I don't want to fully give up on that yet. And so I have a few different types of acrylic yarn, meaning thicknesses of it and brands of it and colors, that I am still considering to continue using. So one of those is this loops and thread, and it's an Aran tweed, they call it. And it has that nice, it's kind of like a cream color, and then it has different shades of brown tweed look to it. And I only have 2 skeins of this. So instead of just saying I'm done with acrylic and moving on, I've decided to use this yarn to start making some of the items that I love to make, and that's just making things up from my mind to fit a person, whether it's myself or my children or whoever. And I am going to use this yarn to do that. as a little experiment, and I will write down the pattern that I use and create some other sizes. I don't know if anyone's interested in doing test knits for these, but I would love to be able to come up with some written patterns for these. I have made one sweater in the past where I came out with a whole pattern for several different sizes, and it was a children's sweater. So I am currently working on just a little slip over, and the plan is this is a children's size, probably like a 12-14 size, that I'm making it to fit my daughter, and then I will create other sizes from this. And so far I just have the top part of the back done, and I am planning on making this out of this yarn that I already have, and then I want to order some more yarn that is the same weight as this, but maybe in a wool, and recreate it using maybe a little bit more expensive brand of yarn. And then you have two options. One that's a little more cost effective for someone who's just starting out, and one for someone who is maybe getting ready to take that next step and wanting to make something out of a more natural fiber that might be a little bit higher cost than what they're used to. And I'm doing this because when I decided to make that switch, I found it very difficult. I knew that I wanted to make some garments, and finding a nice quality garment in a yarn that maybe was acrylic was kind of difficult. And I would see all of these beautiful patterns that were knit in yarn that I could never afford, and I wanted to know, can I make these nice patterns with a less expensive yarn? And so that's kind of where I am coming from on this. I know that many people say that it ends up being cheaper in the long run to buy the more natural yarns because they do last longer. And I get that, and I believe that that's true. But I also am coming from a place where even if that is true, I found it very difficult to get to that point where I could actually have the money to spend on that more expensive yarn, that it just wasn't an option always for me. And I think that maybe this would be like a nice stepping stone for people who are kind of, you know, trying to weigh out what's the best thing to do. And so that is my plans for this. I don't know how long this will take me, but I really just hope that I can help encourage people to, you know, take an inspiration that you have or something that you found a need for, and then if you can find a solution that helps you, you know, pass that along to other people. And if I can do that by creating a few patterns that would help people transition more smoothly from, you know, knitting with acrylics and moving into a more natural yarn, then I would love to help people out with that. I think that that is all that I have for today's video. Thank you for sticking around and listening to all of my plans for this fall. And I know that I didn't really have too much as far as exact patterns that I'll be using for this fall, with me only having this one wool that is really a more cold weather wool. I'm not ready yet to pick exact patterns that I want to do. I know I'm going to do a little bit more simple for this winter. I would like to make one pullover sweater and then maybe make one cardigan. And as far as sewing projects, I think that I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on making some items for the house. And I also would like to make a project bag for my knitting projects that I'm working on. I've seen so many different quilted project bags and they're so pretty that I am going to look around and see if I can find a pattern where I can make my own. That just seems like such a fun and exciting project to do. So that's what I will have my sights out for. And if I find anything that I can share with you all, maybe I can make another video that shows here are my decisions for this fall or for this winter, and here's what I'm looking to make. Because I do love, if I find any good free patterns, I love to share those with people too. So anything that I talked about in this video today, I will include links for any of them down in the description. And hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully I was able to inspire you to get a little creative on your own. And thank you very much. If you liked what you saw here today, keep checking back, and I should have one of these creative videos each month to share what I'm working on and what my plans are for the future. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.